Hello and welcome to Confidently Wrong, a show by regular dudes talking with confidence about content we have no right to speak about with any kind of authority, but do it anyway. I'm Wesley Nakamura, and as always, I'm joined by award-winning director Brian Redondo and Savon Jones, aka Captain Bonnie. This is episode 99, and we break down our reaction to the first couple episodes of the new HBO Max series, The Last of Us. I'm confident that it's going to be the best show you've ever listened to, and well, hey, if it's not, you can always ask us for a refund.
Incredible!
Hello, gentlemen. Welcome back to our 99th episode of Confidently Wrong. We're going to talk about The Last of Us, the newest HBO Max show, based on a video game from 20-something, maybe 2013. I don't know. It's been a while.
2013, good call.
2013, and then there was The Last of Us 2, which came out a couple years ago. Spoilers free, this section right here. You're going to get like 30 seconds of spoiler freeness, and then all bets are off, and we'll be into it. So if you haven't seen the show yet, go watch it. Episodes 1, 2, and probably 3 are out by the time you're listening to this, and it's a good show.
Hey guys,
So,
by the
up?
way, we got 99 episodes, but a bitch ain't one. What do you know? Also, I want to call out that one of our best episodes, one of our first episodes, is about The Last of Us 2. So
I just
think
re-listened
people
to it yesterday.
Yeah. What episode number is that? Is that
Number 4.
4?
4.
Did it age well?
It did age pretty well.
I haven't listened to it yet.
The theme song is different, so that was kind of jarring.
I remember that.
A lot of ums from me, which I still say a lot.
But you've grown, right? I'm
There's
assuming
no
you've
change.
grown.
No
but
change
you've grown significantly.
But it sounds good. It was good to hear Mike back in my ears again as well, being his hilarious Jewish self.
I missed that, man.
He made a couple of Jewish references, as he is wont to do. So go back and listen to episode 4 where we talk about The Last of Us 2, a phenomenal video game for those of you who are into video games. If you just like watching video games, you could YouTube the playthrough and enjoy the game as much that way too.
That's what I did.
Yeah, a lot of what we talk about in that episode, not a lot, some of what we talk about in the episode actually centers around the controversy that was kind of around that game, which has really died down. I mean, I don't think anybody's still vitriolic against The Last of Us 2. They've moved on to other things to be annoyed about. So now we can just appreciate the game for what it is and how great it was.
Yeah, they're busy storming the Capitol now.
Yeah, exactly. They've got other things on their plate. All right. So The Last of Us, our new show, which has been really good, I think, so far. What is the premise of it? This is the TV show, not the video game, Brian. What is the premise of the TV show? How is it different, if at all, from other zombie content properties we've seen, like The Walking Dead or I Am Legend? You know, all those. Like, what makes this one a little bit different too? I think would be helpful for people.
So The Last of Us, right? It is a post-apocalyptic show, and it mainly takes place 20 years after that apocalyptic moment when, a deadly disease is taking over the planet, taking over all of humanity, and turning people into basically zombies. I think what makes us different...
Which they never use that word.
Right, exactly. So what makes us different from, say, The Walking Dead is that, one, their explanation for how this is happening, what this disease is pretty different and nuanced, right? It's not a viral infection or anything. People aren't necessarily zombies, more so that they are taken over by a fungal infection, a real thing in nature called cordyceps, right? And so, they sort of go into this about cordyceps being this fungus that takes over the brains of, let's say, insects. But the show is imagining, what if that phenomenon were to carry over into humans, where human bodies and brains are taken over by a fungus kind of symbiote, and turning people into rage-filled monsters that attack one another in order to spread that said fungus, right? So that's a slightly different nuanced thing that's happening in this show. The other thing is that, as I said, most of it is happening 20 years later, right? So The Walking Dead, a lot of it is, the zombie apocalypse just happens, and now we got to figure out how to survive. Well, in this, humanity has figured out how to survive. There are quarantine zones. The first episode takes place in the Boston quarantine zone, where the federal government has, set up big walls and lots of artillery to protect the inhabitants from any sort of infection. So there is life going on, right? It's a hard, scrapped and desperate kind of life, but it does exist. And within that is Joel, who is a hardened smuggler, and his life changes right at that point in the show when he gets connected with Ellie, a 14-year-old who has only known this post-apocalyptic world. And so, Joel is a 56-year-old guy. He knows what it was like before. He had a whole other life before. He lost his daughter during the apocalyptic moment. And so this show really hinges on that relationship between Joel, who is a survivor, and Ellie, who has come up in this post-apocalyptic world, and what that means for the two of them. So, and then the other thing that's really driving this is the fact that they believe Ellie is immune to the cordyceps, is immune to this fungal infection, whatever you want to call it. And so maybe she has the key to bringing the world back to what it was. So that's the main driver of the show. And I think relative to like The Walking Dead, as I said, it's less about how we're gonna get through this, how we're gonna survive, and it's more about this relationship, this central relationship between Joel and Ellie, amidst all the death and awful things that are happening around them. How do they make it through as two human beings who are now forced to be connected to each other? So ostensibly it's a zombie show, but you could also just see it as kind of like a road trip show too, right? Like almost like father-daughter kind of road trip show, and seeing a relationship where that goes, and whether or not they're able to save the world. So that's where we're at, 2 episodes in.
A couple of months ago, I watched another road trip show called Dog, starring Channing Tatum. Not a good movie.
Channing Tatum and a dog, or is he the dog?
And a dog. I'm not going to go into it. It wasn't that good. Don't watch it, friends. So, and something that you didn't mention was Ellie is played by Bella Ramsey here, who was kind of made famous in Game of Thrones as the little Lady Mormont who swears fealty to Jon Snow, and has more balls than any of the other Lords of the North, which is pretty cool. So she brings that fiery personality to this one as well, but with an American accent, which is very jarring.
Oddly enough, I think Lady Mormont meets her end in Game of Thrones at the hands of a giant zombie.
She does.
Does she?
Right. Yeah, the zombie
Nice.
giant. She gets a stab in and takes it down, but she dies.
Hey, no pain, no sacrifice. So this is a star-driven. Oh, and in episodes 1 and 2, we're actually just getting into the Joel Ellie relationship a little bit, right? There's actually other more important relationships that get established in not more important. There's other relationships that get established in the first couple of episodes. By the time we get through episode 2, we're starting to draw the basis for what Joel and Ellie are going to become. And so now we'll go ahead and do some spoilers. I think Brian let out a little spoiler about the immunity, but that's okay. They reveal that at the end of episode 1. So sorry, friends, but that's the way it crumbles.
Sorry, not sorry.
Yeah, not sorry. So the rest of the episode is going to be spoilers. We'll try not to spoil anything from the game that hasn't happened yet in the show. So if you haven't played the game, you're still safe to listen to this. And then maybe at the end, if we have something we want to add in about the game and the show's tie-ins, we can do that there. All right. So this is a pretty star-driven project in the sense that Pedro Pascal of Mandalorian fame and Wonder Woman fame is the center of the show. He's in every scene.
And Game of Thrones fame.
Yeah, man. He's
Game
also
of Thrones.
over
What
it.
the
Yeah.
hell?
This guy's been in everything. He steals the screen, and his ability to portray a pained character is very high. He's very good at. He's very skilled as an actor in this sense. How are you liking his portrayal in particular of Joel? Is there anything you're enjoying, not enjoying? we've all seen The Mandalorian, so we've seen him do like a "let me take care of you" character before, but this feels very different in that sense. He's not just the very stoic, like this is the way guy here. So, Brian, what are you thinking?
I mean, The Mandalorian is really missing out because he is Joel, right? In The Mandalorian, he's wearing a mask. He's really stoic. He's like,
But you can
Grogu.
feel every emotion he's feeling just
I
through his
mean,
actions. It's so good.
But it's still a limited
Yeah?
performance.
I hear you.
It's limited. It's
All right,
limited.
I
But
didn't
in
mean to interrupt.
this,
Keep going.
in The Last of Us, we really know this guy, even though he's actually, he's not verbose by any means in
No.
this show, right? Like he's a quiet guy. He holds a gun, and he looks, he looks disgruntled all the time. But what's amazing about his performance here,
Yeah, he is disgruntled all the time.
he's got you could tell there's heart below that grizzled surface here, right?
Yeah.
Like there's clearly a lot of things simmering underneath, and so like Joel is an iconic character in the video games. He really means a lot to a lot of people that have played that game. Pedro Pascal has erased that memory for me already. 2 episodes in, I'm like, oh man, this guy is Joel. And then in episode 2, we get even more of a heightened sense of it because he's got this great sarcastic back and forth with Ellie where they're just like throwing daggers at each other back and forth. It's like next question, not answering that. Like, I thought you'd go to school. It's great. That dynamic that is biting, funny, but you like empathize with both people. That is really nice to see start to develop.
Savon.
Yeah, I'm happy. So I was reading an interview from one of the casting directors from months ago before the show came out, because people were complaining about Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey with the casting, right? Or people had their various opinions. And they talked about how they were very intentional of, hey, we need them to look very different from them video game models. Like, we don't want there to be a comparison in terms of, they have to look a certain way or have to, that type of deal. So, one, I just appreciated that because it does let you have a better mental distinction between the two. That being said, Pedro Pascal has a lot of acting range that I don't think we get to recognize as often as we like. We often get to see him in these roles where, maybe Mandalorian's actually more of an exception, but that's a really non-traditional role in general. But think about Game of Thrones. Think about when he was in one of the Kingsman movies. I think he's like one of the villains. But he's in a decent amount of stuff. He kind of actually plays a more lighthearted, generally more funny, smoothie, vibey character. I'm serious. That's how you know me.
Oberyn,
I like
right?
that.
Yeah.
Smoothie vibey.
Yeah, he's real smooth and kind of like he's always in control of the situation, but in like a vibes way. Everyone kind of likes the energy he brings. Again, Mando being kind of a noted exception, but again, that's different. But we don't really get to see Pedro Pascal in a role where he's legit not a nice or calming presence or dude. He's, to your point, he's traumatized. He has that just perpetual, man, I'm getting too old for this shit energy that's just always emanating. He's been through awful stuff. He's a very beaten down by the world character, and you don't get to see Pedro Pascal do that as often as you think.
Yeah, but he's also rage filled.
Yeah,
get to see that too, right? Like, there's rage underneath.
But
all
it's
of
a
that
different,
that's
and
happening.
even then, it's a different type of rage. Because even in like his other stuff, when you see the rage, it's a very brutal, angry rage that, again, you don't get to see Pedro do that kind of stuff. The man's a very talented actor, and I like what he brings to the Joel role because I'm still sold on just that old school rugged feel. But Pedro is still good enough of an actor where that human side, he's already really good at portraying that. So that part of the story kind of, I think, from what we've seen him in the past, comes naturally. What I'm really enjoying is Bella Ramsey. I was kind of one person who was on the fence about casting these 2 Game of Thrones alum. I was like, are they just trying to capitalize off the hype? Are these the best people for the role?
Totally.
I was one of them folks. I'll admit it. I have big questions. let me trust the professionals. Let people do their damn jobs. Bella Ramsey's great. I love her. She Wes, as someone we have both worked with, like that age group, and including maybe some of the not as nice ones. That is such a just realistic depiction of an angry teenager with no filter who don't give a damn what you gotta say, who's clearly just been through maybe not, what is it? Has not had maybe a traditional upbringing or lifestyle.
Yeah.
So
but
all of the trash talking feels real.
But they write her as like whip smart, right? Like, and we've had that kid too.
Dude,
like,
come on,
you're too smart for your own good right now.
Come on. Oh, yeah, come on, man. How many times we done met one who they cool as hell, but I'm like, yo, you too smart for your own good.
Yeah.
And so it's like they have good instincts, but bad, like awful, like decision making, like timing of just, you were right, but like, hey, you didn't need to say that to that dude just now. And you didn't need to do the thing that you just did. Like, you right. You said the quiet part out loud. It was quiet for a reason. But it makes that relationship work because, I've had back and forth with kids where I'm like a younger version of Joel and we're just going back and forth and just throwing daggers. And it's like, it's a very real dynamic that you see it manifests in different ways. And I'm excited for what the ride's going to look like and how that relationship develops. But so far, the acting is great.
She carried that out with Marlene as well, right? And their scenes together. But was able to put it together of like, oh, you have something to offer me that actually is something I might need, right? And so she's able to dial it back. So she's not completely just like teenage angst, right? She's calculated. She's got like a head on her shoulders and able to analyze the situation and see it for what it is. So
she's not a dumb.
Trust her.
Just because we know between her and all the stuff with her school experience, we know she's not a dumb. She's just a tactless teen.
A little bit.
That being said, there's some other stuff about the characters that maybe we'll talk about in a later question, but there's some interesting stuff they did I want to talk about.
All right. So I wanted to talk too about, like, because this is a video game adaptation, there's a risk here, I think, of either straying so far away from the material, you're like, why did this even need to be associated with the video game? Or trying to be so faithful to the video game that you actually lose the strength of a different medium. And you try to play into too many of the strengths of what video game has, which is like that interactivity. You kind of get that first person view, whereas television is not necessarily built for that, right? It's built for more of a third person view. And sometimes you have to imply things and jump ahead and not spell out everything for your audience. Whereas in video games, you probably do have to spell things out a little bit more because you get to experience it firsthand, right?
Good point.
How do you feel like, so Neil Druckmann, who did write The Last of Us and The Last of Us 2 with Naughty Dog, the video game publisher, Craig Mazin, who wrote Hangover 2, which is
he wrote The Hangover?
Not in the same genre, but he wrote Chernobyl, which was a great miniseries. If you haven't seen Chernobyl, holy cow, that's stress out the wazoo there.
That dude needs to revise his resume.
Take
or
off
his wiki page. Yeah.
Yeah, his IMDb.
Just Chernobyl. That's enough. Chernobyl.
It's a good show. I mean, you got to watch it if you haven't seen that, y'all. So I think they're trying very hard to stay true to the game. We're getting a lot of like same visual, framed exactly the same way kind of things from the show. But they do change a few things. Like they talked about how they didn't want this just to be a spore driven infection, because on TV that's a little bit harder to show that, and it doesn't contain itself to anything. It just sort of like, how do you visually show like what's infected and what's not when it's just little twinkles in the air? So they've
completely
changed
agree.
It to
by
be,
the way, that's a great call.
Yeah, and so they've changed it to be more like there has to be a physical contact. They're doing the with the mouth tendril things. Oh my god, that's tough.
That made me viscerally uncomfortable.
Yeah, so things like that they have changed, and so I think they've been conscious about like what works in a video game and what doesn't. But Brian, what do you feel about the balance they've struck between like trying to recreate the video game on TV versus like going on their own and really serving the story here?
I mean, honestly, what I'm struck most by is how weirdly, painstakingly similar the show has been to the game thus far. Like, I actually, after watching episode 1, I was getting into it so much that I went back and replayed the first couple hours of The Last of Us 1.
You booted up the PS4?
No, so
PS3?
Don't hate on me. But I upped my PS subscription to PS Premium or something like that, so that you could
Tier 2.
You could get a free demo of The Last of Us 1.
Okay.
but it's prorated, so I ultimately paid $2 to play 2 hours of the first game.
Okay.
Anyway, so playing through that, I was like, wow, a lot of these things are exactly the same. From the set pieces to
The
the
truck
dialogue, even like the specific jokes between Joel and Ellie.
The
The
dialogue is right
dialogue
there. They copied
is
it.
verbatim,
Hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so in a way, so like reliving it again on screen on the TV screen, it does feel a little weird. But here's the thing: here's part of what made the video game, or what makes Naughty Dog video games generally so great, is that they're already cinematic. And so when that gets translated into this new medium, it can work. It can work on its own, because Naughty Dog and Neil Druckmann, I think, we're already thinking in that space. And so I'll give you like one perfect example. In the intro of the game, you're playing Sarah, who's Joel's daughter, and you get her perspective in the back of the pickup truck as they're trying to drive out of all the chaos that's happening as the apocalypse descends on them. And they do that to the T on the TV show, where the camera is in the back seat. It's moving around. You're seeing like basically 360 degrees around that pickup truck as explosions are going off, buildings are on fire, people are running around, and you're feeling the same anxiety that Sarah felt, and the same anxiety that the gamer would feel being in that seat. But that just works perfectly in TV, right? Like that is something that if the sci-fi movie Children of Men, they kind of did a very similar thing. I have a feeling like all three of these things, the game, the show, and that movie, are kind of referring
Inspired by each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is really working. What I love more so far of the first two shows is actually where Craig Mazin and company are, really deviating
Yes.
from what the game did. Like
Yes.
that's where I'm like, oh, this is new. This is
Yes.
fun and exciting. I know the game so well that, like, to some degree, rehashing it is fine. But it doesn't tickle my brain the way all the new stuff comes into play, right? So like the first episode starts in 1968 on a TV show, on like an interview TV show with some scientists talking about cordyceps. Like that added layer just raises the tension. The second episode starts with in Jakarta, what seems like ground zero for the cordyceps, and like seeing the Indonesian scientist, pull out the mycelium out of a cadaver, and then, tell the army guy, we got to bomb the shit out of this place. Now let me go see my family. Right.
Mhm.
Like those moments feel really Chernobyl to me. Right.
Yeah.
Like where, Chernobyl was kind of known for taking this natural disaster, but looking at it from all these different angles of, what else went into that disaster, what people were involved, what systems of the world failed to create that moment. And so, these new intro things are kind of, doing the same thing. And I'm really hopeful the show gives us more of that. And then on top of that, we get expanded character depth. Like, for example, Sarah, Joel's daughter, we spend a lot of time with her that we never did
Mhm.
before in the game. Like we see her go out and get that watch fixed. We see her hang out with the neighbors. We really
catch that
kind of get to
thing?
know her, right? And there's some weird stuff
Did you
happening in the
catch that in the
background of all
classroom?
that.
Did you catch that in that classroom moment? Did anyone else catch that?
With the light reflecting off the
bracelet?
watch. Or
No. In the in class when Sarah's in school and she's kind of just in class zoning out, looking around. It's very subtle, but you see a classmate's hand kind of like do a little twitch.
Yeah. It
And
reflected
oh,
off his
yeah.
bracelet. Yeah.
Wait, what?
The light was reflecting off the bracelet, but I guess I
That's why
didn't
it
notice the
distracted her.
hand twitching. I
Yeah. The
noticed the
kid-
light shimmering, but
Yeah.
Right. That's why, because his hand was twitching.
Yeah, but his hand was twitching because of clearly signs of the infection stuff.
Oh yeah,
it was just
little
like
stuff like that.
Little stuff.
Ooh,
I had to
that's
rewind it.
good.
Of like, wait, did I just see that man hand twitch like in the thing? I was like, oh.
Or like when the neighbor who gets infected is out of focus behind her, but
Yeah.
you start noticing that they're also twitching and turning, like, but they're out of focus. They're completely blurred, but yeah, they're having a moment. You know,
her
that-
mouth
that
is
kinda-
wide open. Like,
And
oh,
that is how
crap.
peripheral
And then
vision works in real life.
the dog is just staring at her as it's happening, and the dog knows something's wrong, right? So those new moments that we've never seen in the game, and building the characters as part of it, right? And Sarah's an example of that. Tess, who gets kind of short the short stick in the game a little bit. She's much more expanded here, right? We see how she wheels and deals in the quarantine zone, and also what her relationship is with Joel, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not clear in the game
It's very
that
ambiguous.
they're actually have a romance. And she says in episode 2, like, she mentions like the feelings that she wanted to have that Joel didn't allow for. Like, that's that adds a lot of depth to what Joel is going through. So yeah. So like I think the show actually has room to run when it comes to like building out some of these additional strokes. And I can't wait to see more of that, right? Like that's something I want, definitely, as somebody that's played the games so much. But so I'm kind of curious, like, for people out there who haven't played the game, how all of this is hitting.
Yeah, all three of us have seen or played the game, so now we can't have that perspective. So we do have to let us know in the comments or just text us. Most of you know us.
Yeah. I want to answer some of that question. First of all, I want to just like retweet on the vast majority of what Brian said. These cinematic games make it to where adapting it to this medium is a really smooth transition, because that's already kind of what they were doing in the first place. So one, shout out to them. This is probably one of the best middle grounds I've seen of them changing things and adapting and copy pasting things that I've seen in really any kind of, in most media, honestly, from, I'm talking books to movie, shows to movie, all of that. They've done, like, some of the 1-for-1 shots were great. What I want to kind of zero in on what a lot of Brian mentioned, is that the intention behind changes that they made. And some of the changes, I immediately saw it and was like, this is not, and I'm going to use the word agenda, that's a loaded term, but agenda in terms of, they want this character to be received or developed in a way that's different from how it was in the game. What I'm already picking up is that they're making Joel a much more likable character from the get-go in the show. We all love Joel in the games, but Joel in the games is not a nice dude. He's way less chill and jokey, and just, he doesn't have the energy. He doesn't have that Pedro Pascal energy,
No, definitely not. Yeah,
he doesn't. And so, for example, and I'm going to talk about some scenes.
Like,
that
is he
did
mean to
differently.
Ellie in the beginning?
He's a lot. I mean, he's a lot colder.
Okay.
Yeah,
He's a lot
forget.
colder. But
It's been so long.
But not even that
and
aside.
he's more of a blank too, I think,
Okay.
in the game.
Gotcha.
Yeah, which is what I'm going to lean into, right? So, like, here's some distinct changes they made that I think were meant to humanize Joel a little bit more. First of all, in the scene when they're sneaking out the city, and the guard catches them sneaking out, right? And he's about to shoot them. In the game, it was just all of them on their knees and just getting tested. And it's Ellie who actually kicks things off to kind of like, because she knows that she'll show up as positive, right? And so she starts to pop off and help them escape and fight off. Tess and Joel, they were basically like, we're screwed. In the game, I mean, in the show, they went a completely different direction. They said, no, we need to make a parallel between Joel's trauma when he lost his daughter and him holding Ellie. And so the situation is like a 1-for-1, right? Of him holding Ellie, gun being aimed at by a soldier, and the soldier getting ready to shoot him. In the game, that situation looks completely different, right? The initiator of who saves who. And again, in the game, Ellie knifes it and starts a fight that they win. In the show, Joel is like, no, they literally do a flashback moment, 1-for-1, right? Of him holding his now deceased, his late daughter, to let you, the viewer, know Joel is not about to let this happen again, holding a young girl and get shot by the army because they tripping. And he beats the crap out of the dude and beats him to death. And it's a rage beat down, right? Like a no, not again. That doesn't happen at all in the game. In the game, Ellie pops off because she's a tactless teenager and they win the fight, and then she explains the situation. Two completely different. That's a huge scene that is completely deviating in a way that completely changes how we view Joel. Because now in the first episode, we immediately see the soft spot he has for this girl that he probably at this stage in the game actually didn't have in the game, right? He was still just like, yo, I don't rock with you like that. This is business. And yeah, some of that they're already building. Them not leaving the Tess and Joel relationship open-ended, again, meant to humanize him a little bit more of, hey, it's not just business. He kind of has people he still somewhat cares about in this world. Again, left a bit more open in the game of like what they were, if it was just business or not. The entire changing of the arc with Robert and him scamming them out of the stuff. In the game, it's guns because they're trying to like just it's guns and it's a whole Firefly thing. In the show, it's he got scammed out of a car battery because he's searching for Tommy, which he's not even doing in the games.
Yeah,
you know, in the game,
Tommy's like barely introduced at that point.
Yeah, him and Tommy are like, no, we're estranged. We're actually not on good terms. Like, he actually isn't looking for Tommy at all. And like, what in the game, I think he comes across Tommy by chance. It's just just by happen chance. So they immediately in the first episode are trying to do what the game didn't do, which is show that Joel does have things that he kind of cares about. He cares about Tess. He's looking for his brother and is trying to get a battery to find him because even though they beefed out, he still cares about him. When Ellie's life is threatened, even though he knows nothing about her and he's supposed to be this hard-nosed, it's only business, he immediately risks his life and beats the crap out of the soldier in a way that is personal. 3 big moments that are like, hey, Joel's meant to, they want to humanize him more. This is not a criticism. I don't think this is a bad thing. And I think that considering some of the stuff we know happens down the line in the games, or in this game in particular, on this story in particular, them humanizing Joel in this way is probably the right call. Because he might be a much less likable character. And it's taking advantage of the skills of Pedro Pascal. But that being said, the changes, I've been very happy with everything that they have changed. And the things that they have left the same, I have also been happy with. And I felt like this is a good homage to a gamer who experienced it. But like not seeing the Robert thing, what? Don't they like execute him in cold blood? Basically, like, oh, you scammed us? All right, cool. We're going to beat the crap out you, figure out who did it. Then they shot him in the head. Like, that was brutal. They don't do that at all. This is them just stumbling across something and it's like, oh, Robert was always in the wrong because he got scammed. Where really he was a super scammer. In the game, it was like, no, I owe people who are more dangerous than y'all. Like, Robert's a jerk, but his like we would have had to do the same thing if we was in Robert's shoes. They're doing a lot to make him a lot less morally gray.
That's interesting. I didn't remember that. So in my head, I'm already seeing. Like, I can only remember the more fully realized version of Joel that we see a little bit later.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Joel executes a man in cold. Like, she implies, like, in the show, Tess even says, hey, my friend is scared of you. So they, like, imply it. Yeah. But, in the beginning of the game, we see Joel and Tess straight up, they executing people. Like, oh, bow, in the head. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's like that
sure.
now.
I agree with what you're saying, and I think that's 100% spot on the right take. I hope that as we move forward, we're not just doing a bunch of like 1-for-1 shots, though. I think partly because, like people who have seen the game deserve to like enjoy this as well and not being like, oh, I saw this part, I've already seen this part, right? Like do something a little bit different with it, like put your own spin on it. This is a different medium, a different time. It's been, 10 years already since the game came out. So I didn't necessarily love like the 1-for-1 where they're in the back of the truck doing exactly the same shots, right? Like you could do that in a different way. That's quote unquote also cinematic, and it would have been just as cool. I didn't mind it. I just thought like yeah, okay, but we saw this, right? Like you're doing the same thing that you've already done. And the the thing that's like getting me like weirdly is the tower that's fallen over onto the next tower.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about that.
But it's somehow still standing. Like, there's no way. If it fell over like that, it would have enough weight to either knock the next one over or it would have just, like, crumbled in the middle. Like, there would have... I don't know. Whatever. It's fine. It's not a big deal. Just... That was like, oh, you're just trying to get too cute with it in a real-life setting where it's like, ooh, actually, in real life, that physically doesn't feel like it would work. So that part took me out.
There's also, like perfect place settings still in place in some of those locales that they walk through. It's like,
oh, yeah,
wait, this place was bombed? And you're telling me the goblets are still standing?
Well, and you know what was slightly unrealistic, which I don't know, I'm not a military expert. The area around the quarantine zone was filled with cars and junk and stuff like that. And the three of them use that as cover as they're escaping to avoid the light and stuff. That would not be there if you were creating a military compound trying to avoid having people sneak up on you, especially like zombies. You'd have to clear that area out because you'd want to see what was coming. There'd be no way that area is open. But whatever. It's
all
fine.
the things that you could have zoomed in on. I thought you was about to come with some like actual.
No, I just
Really?
don't want them to like stick so closely to the game that it starts feeling like, wait, you guys are just recreating the game on screen. Like I could just watch the YouTube of the game if I wanted to see that. That's all. But I think what you're saying is right, that they've changed it. They've changed the characterization of Joel in a way that's actually going to help this show. So I'm excited. I think you're having me have more faith that it's not
I think
gonna be
those.
that way.
I mean, I'm gonna be keeping it a buck, Wes. I think those deviations are a lot more significant than the things you pointed out. Like that feels like, yes, they're both something changed, something different, but I think one has a lot bigger. Like them having a shot of them walking into the city isn't a big deal in the context of like, all right, but they're completely recharacterizing the main character. Like, shouldn't that? I feel like that's more important than just a few fan service shots that if you've never played it, it's just a nice shot. And if you have, at worst, you recognize it. Like, which, if don't watch an adaptation of something and be mad that they do one for one or homage shots to the thing that they're referencing. Like, I don't think I've seen.
I just don't want them to go overboard with that. That's all.
I think the differences we've seen already have shown that that's going to be less of a, like, think about just all the flashbacks and behind the scenes stuff that we just literally story wise could not have gotten. I think to Brian's earlier point, they're already striking a really strong balance with that. Just looking at the extra stuff we didn't get in the game. Like,
Yeah,
it's
that
a lot
extra
and
stuff
it's
is really cool.
significant.
I think we realize that like this show has a healthy budget. It's got the HBO kind of like,
Send it.
this is quality.
It's got the 9 p.m. slot on Sunday.
It's
like
9
that's
p.m.
what's-
slot.
yeah.
So I think like our expectations are getting a little bit higher. So some of the fan service stuff that all adaptations have, like,
Yeah.
let's talk about the MCU, right? Like,
I want fan service.
why does Namor have like tiny wings on his ankles? Right?
How can Superman fly? It was back to that conversation again, Wes.
I think we're like, yeah, I think we want more out of like the HBO 9 p.m. slot where like things don't feel fan servicey, but I think naturally it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And the tightrope walk for this show is figuring out, well, what's the right balance. But this is kind of where I want to hear from people that have never played the game,
So
right? Like,
whether that's working.
are they gonna notice these things or not? I'm not sure.
So one thing I'll just add, because we're getting, again, this is from our perspective. I think another example, I mean, I guess the fan server thing is just such an interesting conversation point, because I'm thinking about Game of Thrones, right? Which that's an adaptation. And same deal. They adapt certain stuff. Like most of season 1 is like a 1-for-1 adaptation of the book with some changes that were made. And I'm just wondering, I guess for people who consumed it that way, like I ended up seeing the show first, then read the book, then rewatched the show. But I don't know, is that us just being unreasonable? What's the line between that's a valid criticism and us being unreasonable fans? Like, is it a problem that Game of Thrones season 1 is doing what I think pretty much what Last of Us did? It's like a pretty strong 1-to-1. Like, they have huge fan service moments from the book that I'm like, oh, okay. In hindsight, I'm like, oh, they fan serviced the hell out of that scene. But as a viewer, it didn't bother me because I didn't know anything. So is us being unreasonable? As like, are we being the crankety fans who are never happy with the thing that is adapted because it's not our individual vision of what an adaptation should be, and we have our own what's a 1-to-1 ratio acceptance of like, what's the line between, are we just remaking it or are you deviating so far that it's a different thing?
Yeah.
Have we become the thing that we swore to never become?
How dare they change the race of that superhero?
Yeah, how dare they adapt this to screen and make some changes here and others they don't, and some of these align with what I like and some don't. Like, I don't know. I'm not saying it's a right or wrong thing, but it's something we've watched a lot of adaptations on the other side of this and didn't have that and didn't have these complaints. So how valid are they? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you're doing an adaptation, I think you want to have a reason for it to be adapted, right? Like, take advantage of the different medium that you're in. Some things that work in books don't work as well in movies, and some things that work in movies don't really work as well in books. And so you've got to like adjust it too. And it's like, if you're just recreating the thing that already existed, like, you're not really doing a whole lot of work, right? Like, I know you're like, movie production is different than book production, but it's like, you're not, you didn't contribute to that, right? Like, literally you're just using whatever somebody else did to redo it. That to me is not like as interesting, because it's like,
Game
well,
of Thrones season 1.
I could have just gone and redone that, right? Or reread the book or replayed the video game. Like, give me a reason to do this new version of it, or to watch this new version of it, or enjoy it. You know, that's all. I think, but I think you're right? And some people complain that, like, hey, you didn't keep that to, like, you didn't keep that adaptation to be the, like, exactly the same as before, and I really wanted it to be that way. I wanted to see the thing on the book that was, you know, and people want that sometimes, and I think there is a balance there of, like, there has to be something new added to it, because otherwise, like, why redo it?
Yeah.
And if you completely change from the source material, it's like, well, why did you even use the source material in the first place? You might as well have just made your own story, you know? So,
well, one thing I'll say, Wes, that you made a very good point about was that the game is very much from a third person perspective, or like to more first person.
Yeah.
It is from the view of Joel and Ellie, top to bottom. You don't see other people's perspectives. I think the benefit, like, to answer your question of why adapt this, I think the biggest strength is that in this game, in the game, it's only from one perspective of really just Joel and Ellie there. And with this, we've already gotten to see numerous sequences from the perspective of other characters, and I think that's the biggest strength that this show can have.
Yeah.
And what's promising for me is that I'm already seeing a lot of that. On top of the changes we already mentioned, we're just getting lots of scenes that we could not have gotten from the style of the game, because it was from one person's point of view. So already getting scenes with, like, Marlene and them without Joel and all of that, is like, oh, okay, cool. This is just stuff that the game could not have given us this. And, you know, as long as we get more of that, that's kind of really what my bar, I think, is going to be of how I judge the show is. I'm okay with the 1-for-1 shots and hard references to the game. How many other perspectives are we getting to flesh out this story in a way that the game, narrative-wise, was not able to? So
yeah, that'd be cool, right?
I'm glad you gave me that language, though, because I'm like, okay, cool. Now I know what I actually am going to be looking for and, like, judging this show by.
All right,
that's been the best parts.
Let's take a sidebar here. And get into our personal own thoughts and experiences. So, if you, Brian Redondo, Savon Jones, if you were thrown into some kind of apocalyptic situation with zombies or a mass infection or something like that, what is your strategy? Are you linking up with other people and trying to, you know, like, strength in numbers it? Are you going alone and being the lone wolf, hunter gatherer, and just living, you know, in a remote place away from everybody? I know it would depend on the particular, you know, way that the virus spreads or the thing spreads. Are you a tools guy? Or are you like, I'm taking the shotty with me and the axe and I'm just going to town on people? Like, what is your zombie strategy here? Savon, I want to know yours first. I feel like yours and mine would probably be very different.
We should have talked about this before the show.
Why is he giggling?
Because
this is menacing.
Not menacing. It's just like, can I just, like, opt out of that altogether? Like,
yeah.
Oh, you're just gonna exit bag yourself.
Yeah.
Is that what's happening?
Dude, their
I'm
lives
done.
are awful. Their lives are awful. There is nothing as someone who's watched some of this show, watched both games. I've watched Resident Evil. I've watched plenty of zombie movies and all of that and post-apocalyptic stuff. None of that seems worth it. I'm like, oh, this is awful. The regular modern world is stressful. I'm like, nah, I need something to be surviving for. And I'm very much a quality over quantity type of guy. Like, if I got to just have the privilege of enjoying the pre-apocalypse world, and this is just the footnote we end on, F it. So we just gonna sell high. We just gonna sell high. Like, F this, because now it is only downhill.
Would you let
here.
the would you let the zombies overtake you?
Oh, no, absolutely not. No,
okay,
no.
So you're out before them.
Just like, nope, just like, oh, hit them with that. Oh, this our situation?
Yeah.
All right,
but you don't know. What if there's a cure out there?
You.
You're not even going to stick around to see if somebody could bring you the cure.
Man.
Miracle. Last second, buzzer, 3 at the buzzer.
You got to endure a lot to get to the cure, though, right?
Yeah.
Like, you got to suffer for 20 years.
Okay. So, here's a better answer to that question. Okay, here's a better way of putting it. I'll probably just go with, for me, I'm like a herd mentality guy.
Okay.
I'll just, I believe in the survival strategy of the buffalo, where we just stick in a big ass group.
Yeah.
And as long as I'm not the slowest or the oldest,
I'm not trying to be on
mathematically, I'm probably going to be all right.
Yeah.
Like, we'll just play the numbers and then whatever crappy situation I'll deal with.
All right.
That being said,
But if it got bleak,
I need to see some growth. I need some upward. I need to see like there's no way in hell I would have made it 20 years through that shit. What? What? You got like 3-4 good years out of me before it's like, all right, what's going on? Like what's
the end game here? Where are we going?
Like what's the is there any sign of hope? When that lady was in the thing saying just like, hey, there's no and they made it clear in like the show, right? And stuff like, hey, this is like a fungal thing. It's not like a vaccine for this. This isn't like normal stuff we done had to deal with. So they pretty sold the hopelessness of it too. So also if I'm hearing like, I don't know how public that information was, but if I'm getting the scouting report from the medical professionals like, hey, yo, this is bad.
Yeah.
I'm like,
GG's.
I'll draw all the information, give me about 3-4 years, and then I can make an informed decision of whether I want to renew my subscription to this world.
That tracks. So Savon sees too many predators in the lobby, and he's like, you know what? Hey, I'll come back tomorrow. This ain't it.
Sorry, I don't want to
do you go back upstairs and just like, all right, it's done. Let me like enjoy every last thing in my fridge.
Yeah.
I'm gonna smoke all these blunts.
Yep.
And then
enjoy the last of my earthly possessions.
stove?
Look, do the last of my earthly possession. Like, all right, y'all. Hey, we had a good run. Hey, all right. Nice knowing you. Hey, bro. Hey, man, be easy.
Put the robe on.
Keep an eye out for so-and-so. All right, y'all. Hey, all right. Savage out.
You jumping out the window?
Give me 3-4 years.
All right.
No, I'll be generous. I'll give it 5 years. 5 years is like a solid amount of like, all right, is there any kind of trajectory one way or another?
Okay, so it's not an immediate like, all right, I'm just gonna
I know because Wes made a fair point of like, hey, what if there is a solution? What if there's hope for a solution? We don't quite know. As the viewer, I know that maybe it feels more hopeless, but if I'm living that situation, you don't quite know.
You don't. So
give me a little bit of time. But the way society collapses in this, I'm like, oof, that's
that was in a hurry.
That was not very promising. That's not if they went to shit that bad, I'm like, man, they must have not felt good about their odds.
All right, Brian, what are you doing? Are you taking the axe with you, the shoddy? What's your approach?
So Anna and I have actually spent a bit of time talking about this very scenario. We live in New York, and there's a good chance that some shit is going to go down. Like it might not be the zombie apocalypse. It could be a lot of things, right? It could be a terrorist thing. Like who knows?
Aliens.
So, aliens are like Empire State Building. I'm going there.
Statue of Liberty. Knock that shit down.
That is happening. So, we have thought about, okay, well, what is in our apartment that would be useful in a scenario like this? How are we going to get out? One, that's like first and foremost.
So you're trying to get out of the city.
We got to get out of our apartment, right?
Okay.
Like if the horde is coming up the stairs, we got to equip ourselves with our Caraway cookware, with some heavy skillets, right? You got to have the skillets. It's all about the kitchen in this scenario.
Okay.
You
run to the kitchen. You got to break out the skillets, right? The bigger the bigger the diameter, the better, right? You want to make sure you can wield it. It works as both a defensive and offensive device, right? Depending on your swing.
It's a shield and a blunt weapon.
And right, that's your blunt weapon, but then you also need the sharp weapon. So kitchen, you got to get that kitchen knife, right?
Chef knife.
I got the chef knife.
Okay.
Like 6 or 8 inches, whatever, right? So there you go. You got sword and shield, right?
You've just turned yourself into Link. I love
it. Maybe at some point I'll find a boomerang, and then so you gotta stack each other, right? Like one person covering the front flank, and the other person covering the back, right? And then taking out hordes that way, and then you got to go out through the window and make sure your getaway vehicle is readily available, right? So you can't park 5 blocks away. You got to park in front of the building. Make it out of the building. Stab who you need to stab. Kitchen pan or cooking pan, whoever you need a cooking pan. Get into that car. And then you got to get out from all the people, right?
Yeah.
People are bad in apocalyptic situations. This is what we know from from Walking Dead, Station 11.
Wait, so
Children of Men.
are you going east? Are you going to the end of Long
regular
Island?
life.
Yeah, regular life. Everyday New York.
Pre-apocalyptic
Stay
world.
away from people. I do not go to Times Square because there's a billion people there, and they are obnoxious as all else.
They don't walk.
So,
They just
so you
stand.
got to stay away from those hordes. The hordes are bad. So you are then gonna drive. We would drive north.
Okay.
Basically, we're trying to get to upstate New York. Maybe this is all just a means to live our like hipster rural fantasy or whatever.
Apple
But
farming.
You gotta go. You gotta go a quiet place with this. Is what I'm saying, right? Like a quiet
Remote
place,
as possible.
remote, no people. Set up the defenses. But however, I will admit though that once and if Anna and I were able to get to said farm country, I think maybe we would have a hard time. We're not going to die from a zombie bite or anything. We'll probably die of just being incapable.
Starvation.
I appreciate the honesty and self-awareness.
Anna has a lot of plants, but I would not say she has a green thumb. Like, I have seen quite a few of them die. So I don't know how we're going to deal with crops and things.
Kill the infected.
Like, it might not be a great life out there. Will we make it to the 5 years? Who knows? But first and foremost, got to get out of effing New York. Like, it's going to be bad here. Whatever it is, it's going to be bad.
It would.
People equals doom.
I haven't thought about what tools specifically I need. I don't think. Well, I don't own a firearm anyways. But if I had a firearm, I don't think that would be like I would take it. But I can't count on that, right? You're gonna have your 20 bullets and then you're done, right? Like, so you can't really rely on that. So I like the idea of the knife and the kitchenware because A, I have access to that, and B, like it's reusable, right? It's gonna be good as long as you can keep the knife kind of sharp. It doesn't have to be super sharp; it just has to be kind of sharp.
You can also cook food on it later. And
then you're cooking food. Like it's a multi-use thing. So I like that. And it's easy. You can put that in the backpack. You're good to go. I'm out of here. It's true. Weapons they break down, but you just got to survive. Like Brian said, the first part of it, you got to survive the first part of it. But I think I would be very ill-equipped. Not only am I not a survivor, I'm not a camper. I'm not physically imposing. I can't overpower stronger people. I'm not quick on my feet, like speed wise. I've never been accused of being too fast.
So neither quick nor strong. That's quite a pair.
I wear glasses, so my vision is not very good. Once my glasses break or my contacts wear out, I'm done. I have some exercise induced asthma, so if I'm having to run for long distances, it's game over for me. I've got allergies.
What's going to get you is dry eye, basically.
The lack of hygiene, guys.
He's going to be running from the infected, and it's just they just got that stamina.
Yeah. I have allergies, so if you're in the dusty room trying to survive, like Joel and Ellie were in the museum, I'm gonna sneeze. Those guys are gonna find me. It's not even a question. I'm gonna have to sniffle and be in a minute, and then game over. I'm eaten up by the zombies. So I really don't think I'd have a chance to survive. But I'm gonna take Brian's advice. I'm gonna grab the chef's knife. I'm gonna grab the skillet or the the pan. I'm gonna do my best. Me and Kaya and Jen, we're gonna try and survive it. I'm not gonna punch out.
So you would go out swinging.
I would.
You wouldn't be like, I know I'm a meal. Let me put some cheese on it.
I'm a whole snack, bro. No, I'm not giving up. You know what? I wouldn't
let myself turn either.
I don't want to die. I'm someone who's I got a very high survival instinct here, or survival impetus.
So if you got bit, are you chopping off the limb?
Oh yeah, I'm doing everything.
Or are you just
to try and
ending
survive.
yourself?
No, I'm trying to survive it. Hey, if someone said, hey, I could amputate that arm, it might work. I'd be like, let's take that 1% chance. Let's do it. Go. I can't look, and it's gonna be painful, but yeah, give me the 1% chance of living, and I'm gonna take it. So, do you think the guys that are amputees in the show, do you think they were infected, and that's how they survived?
I'm assuming yes.
Or do you think they were veterans? I think they might have been just veterans.
I think it was just veterans because they
were wearing Desert Storm shirts too.
And I don't know if this is I don't.
But they'd have to be 30.
I don't think this is a spoiler, but I just can't think of any instances in the game or in the series where someone was in like a take off the limb to save me situation.
Yeah, but maybe
Like that never came up.
Yeah.
maybe
That
if
is
it's
a
real
very
fast.
Walking Dead scenario.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
which is like in most zombie infection media, usually that happens plenty of times. Where it's like, oh, all right, we can take it off. I don't know. I felt like that would have come up already, but in fairness, they do change how the infection works from game to show. So like maybe we just need to keep watching and seeing how they kind of want to define how the rules work.
All right.
Because
Yeah.
to their point, Spores was like, okay, that's gonna be the whole always have a gas mask on you thing. That was never really gonna translate well into the visual media. By the way, again, a change that's like, hey, them taking like them a sign of them knowing what they're doing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So
was
like
good.
the addition
And
of
they don't have to wear a mask the whole time.
right, they're avoiding the Mandalorian problem.
Yeah, I mean, good
Which
gameplay.
they're aware of.
Yeah.
But the addition of the mycelium, right? This idea that
Oh,
there are these like fungal
It's a network.
tendrils,
Yeah.
yeah, that burrow underneath the earth, and there's a network of them. And if you step on one place, you could wake up a horde a mile away. That is completely new. And I'm really uncertain where they're trying to go with that, right? Because they're basically introducing Chekhov's gun, and that gun has to go off at some point. So like now we know like there's a new danger in the show. What does it mean? Like, you know, so you're telling me that they can't really step anywhere?
Yeah.
How does that work, right? You would if that is possible, you think like everywhere is fair game to wake up a horde. So like how do they navigate that, and what's going to happen in the show that shows that danger again, right? Like we saw in the end of episode 2, they woke up some people, and then the dude with the mycelium in the mouth
Ugh.
gives that disgusting death kiss to Tess,
Whew.
which
could
was also
see it. It, like,
confusing.
Wobbles
right?
her,
Like-
throat. Ugh.
Like why does it have to go through the mouth? Like why wouldn't that guy just bite her or
Like
rip her
everybody
apart
else.
like everyone else?
Yeah.
Why did everyone else run right past her, but she only gets noticed by that one with the mycelium mouth?
Hmm.
And then also, looking at the trailer for next week's episode, it kind of looks like the same infected person with the death kiss is in the following episode. So
Oh, really?
are they? I don't know if that's accurate or if I'm just, confusing one zombie for another.
Yeah.
But are they going to introduce basically kind of like a White
A
Walker?
Night King?
Yeah, exactly. Is there a head of the horde? Is that
Well-
what's happening here? Who's got all the mycelium?
I don't think
don't
so,
know.
but maybe.
well, a couple things. One, I mean, we all know about how the mushroom thing in real life go with those underground networks. Like that's very much grounded in how mushrooms work in real life. Which
I don't
is-
think their communication is like that instantaneous, though.
no, but the idea of them being
Yeah.
connected though is like
Yeah.
it's plausible. Like in the context of them having a fictional fungal thing, if real life fungi are connected through these deep underground networks, super far from each other.
Yeah, but just straight from like a perspective of like, does that make the fungus like OP?
Yeah.
Right?
I
And
mean,
then
I
they're
don't
gonna
think
have
it
to,
makes
like,
it. I don't
undo
think it makes it OP, but it means that they can do a different type of threat in
That's
the
what Brian said,
context.
yeah.
A different type of, like, basically this is them setting up a horde. It's a horde situation. Hordes were already soft implied in the games, and you kind of see it a little bit. But if you lean into this idea of how mushrooms are connected through these underground systems and how that can just have a bunch of them be tied in some loose way or one way or another, I mean, that's just really cool stuff you can do with that. And again, we see in the game of what the deeper versions of this infection can look like on people long term. So we know what like other kind of enemies there are. I think they're setting that up to make it more of a tangible threat, maybe to these military people who otherwise are like pretty efficient and like pretty badass. But again, I think that's a great change, because that change wouldn't have worked or really made sense in the context of the game. But this is like, oh, if you're focusing more on some of these big settlements, it's like, hey, I don't know. I like that change a lot. I'm a big fan.
All right. Well, let's start wrapping up here. So, is there anything about this show that you're looking forward to seeing, like how it evolves? Because we're only 2 episodes in at this point. I think by the time people listen to this, there'll probably be 3 episodes out, and it's a whole 10 episode run. So we've got 7 or 8 more episodes to go. What are you really hoping to see here? Like for me personally, I'm really just invested in the main story. Like, how does this relationship between Joel and Ellie develop? And I do want to know what happened to Tommy, right? Like they're worried about him. I want to see how that plays out. Like how do they get to Tommy? What do they have to do to get there in terms of surviving different zombie attacks and that kind of thing. And ultimately, like how does the payoff land? Given that so many people know where the season one or where the first video game ended, how does that end up playing out on screen? And can they twist it, or is it going to just be the same? And we're going to be like, oh, okay, yeah, we knew that was coming, and it doesn't feel rewarding. I feel like they're actually conscious of like how many people will have played the video game, and so I think I got faith that they might build in enough, not difference, but enough of like a juiciness to the end that we're still going to really enjoy it, even if we know what's coming from the video game, or maybe they'll change it completely and it'll be slightly different. So I'm bought into the main parts of the show. I love the characterization. I love the dialogue so far between the characters, both the ones that are new and the dialogue that's lifted straight from the game. It's all working for me.
Yeah, I think the show is really strong so far, and of course, we love the game so much. Like the show's got to deliver on the narrative, right? The base narrative of the game, and that'll play out. We'll see how that plays out. The thing that I'm interested in seeing happen with this show is that I really want to see it separate itself from The Walking Dead and from other zombie media, and even from like Station 11. I want to see it separate from that, because a lot of those shows, once they start introducing more non-infected, right? Like it's very much about like, okay, here's how this group of people live. Here's how that group of people live, right? Like in Walking Dead, it's like, oh, you got the cannibals over here. In this place, it's like an authoritarian regime with the governor and stuff like that. I want to know thematically, what is The Last of Us really going to be about? That's more than just the ground level 1-to-1 relationship with Joel and Ellie, right? Like that's all well and good, but I want to know what Craig Mazin, the guy who created Chernobyl, I want to know what he has to say in this vehicle of post-apocalyptic zombie media, right? Like the best thing about zombie movies generally is that they work as commentaries on society.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what does The Last of Us have to tell us about the world that we live in, right? Like what's the mirror element? And right now I think that's a little unclear or underplayed, right? That's not really at the surface, or bubbling to the surface of what we've seen. Right now it's like really very much about characterization, which I love, which is the best way to go about these things. But I want the thing that will take this over the top will be bringing it to like that more universal level. And so I'm curious to see what they do in that regard.
Sav?
Yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing how they continue to balance things that they want to keep directly 100% faithful from the game and things that they drastically change. The fact that that's been so jarring of the one-to-one shots and then entire mini plot lines being completely cut or changed meant that they spent a lot of intentional time talking about what they wanted to keep the same and what they didn't. And so I can already tell that there's a lot of thoughtfulness put behind that. And so I'm putting trust in the writers and showrunners to continue to have that really strong balance of this was from the game and it needs to stay exactly the same because it works in a way that changing it, there's no benefit to it. And then here are moments where we can take advantage of this new story, new medium, film, and make a drastic change to maybe do something the first game didn't get. Again, the truck escape destruction scene, that was the same. The Joel and them escaping the guard, that was completely different. I'm looking forward to seeing how they do more of that. To what you were saying, Wes, about, what are the things they're going to change and not change? People, again, I'm going to keep using Game of Thrones as an example because it's an HBO adaptation, but everyone who watched the first season of Game of Thrones knew that Ned Stark was going to die at the end of season 1. And they did his death pretty much exactly as it happens in the books. And it's still one of the most shocking TV moments of all time, right?
I'm still shocked.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess what I'm getting at is that I don't want them to change major things for the sake of surprising people who played the game already. If you've played the game, you need to be okay with knowing what the broad strokes and ending of what this story is going to be. And so even thinking about the ending, I hope that's something that they don't change actually, because I think,
me too.
like if they were to change the ending, I would be legitimately upset, because that's what part of me, that's what to me makes the story so amazing. And if you're just changing it for the sake of, oh, we got to shock the viewers who already know what's going to happen, to me, that's bad writing. I don't think that's what's happening or what's going to happen.
But it's all about the how. I think for me, it's not necessarily that the what has to change. It's just the how. It doesn't even have to change. It just has to be good, right? And so
and certain stuff,
we'll see
again,
how
like
that goes.
they've shown a strong track record already of knowing what to drawing the line of what to change and what not to change. I trust that they're going to maintain it. My personal theory is that the ending probably isn't going to be drastically different. But thinking about what's going to make the show go from good to great, Brian, this is what it's going to come down to. And it's funny because Naughty Dog recently released a statement talking about how, like, the same way they ended the Uncharted game series, they said they don't feel any pressure from their like leadership to pump out another Last of Us game for the sake of money. It's basically if there's a story worth telling, cool. But if not, we can just end it right here and be cool with what we did. And to me, that's a sign of them having some creative, what's the word?
Control?
Yeah,
Agency?
but
Integrity,
agency,
respect.
No, not integrity or respect either, because some things can go on longer in a way that's not always. I don't want to say that's inherently a bad thing, but
No, it's not.
Clearly, they understand that it's okay to have a stopping point. And I think what would make The Last of Us go from good to great in most shows is that, honestly, and I think they already plan on adapting the next game. I think, honestly, you adapt the next game, you do the same deal of adapt it, you change some things, leave some stuff the same. And I think if you just end on that note, you avoid the problem that these other stories had where it dragged on and there was no end in sight, and then it just went on for the sake of going on.
The Walking Dead.
Exactly. Like The Walking Dead was amazing. The reason it fell off is because it just had no end in sight. And, we all finished The Last of Us too, right? That could be something that you end on, and the themes of that game I think could translate into the show well. And you could have a good 3, maybe even 4 season show that tells that entire story, and you could just end it there and be like, yo, this is one of the most fire adaptations ever. It was dope. They knew when to stop. Greatness. Put it in the all-time grade of shows that ended when it was supposed to. Yeah, I'm saying, like, that's a very real track record for this show if it's just of them knowing when to end it. And I think they already sensed that just based off what they're basing it off of,
I hope HBO does not get greedy.
That's what it comes down to.
I hope they don't extend it over and over for no reason.
I don't think so. I've heard two seasons is where they're stopping. Yeah. That's what I've heard.
That would be amazing.
You could maybe split the second game into 2 separate seasons if you wanted to get really creative.
Should we talk about spoilers?
I have to go.
No,
you can for sure talk about spoilers if you want, but I gotta go.
You know what? We'll save the spoilers for another episode, maybe. I think we've covered a lot.
We will probably revisit this show.
Oh, we're definitely going to revisit this show.
All right, friends. Well, hit us up on socials at confidently_pod, Instagram. We want to know, if you haven't played the game, you're especially our target right now. How are you experiencing the show, and are you enjoying the entire show? Are you feeling like it's too video gamey? Are certain parts working for you? Let us know in the comments, in the DMs. You know the deal. Visit all our sponsors, of which we have none, but one day.
Maybe we could get like a kitchenware sponsor.
Moral support.
Faberware, KitchenAid. We're on to you. We need your money. Yeah, Cutco.
Oh God.
Multi-level marketing. It's not a scam, guys. It's not a scam.
Big bag. It's not a scam if I make money. What up?
All right. See you later, guys. We'll be back. We're gonna take a break. We won't have an episode next week. We should have one the following week. It'll be our 100th episode.
Woo!
Bang, 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 bang. Laters. Sexy deep voices only.
The Sweat Hotel.
Ew.
What?
Oh, y'all never heard of the Sweat Hotel?
Never heard of the Sweat Hotel. Do I want to?
You know the singer Keith Sweat?
Yuck.
I'm saying.
Actually, I love Keith Sweat, but like now's not the time for that.
So Keith Sweat has had a radio show he's had for years, and an album that is called The Sweat Hotel, and he does like the sensual voice and has callers, and yeah.
I guess that's the name of this episode. Episode 99, The Sweat Hotel.
Oh wait, no! Don't tell me this got recorded.
Oh, we're
God.
recording.
Oh God!
Definitely got
Hold on! Oh
recorded.
damn! Oh well, some of y'all know about The Sweat Hotel.